We're ankle-deep in a river of raw sewage, sloshing single file through the bowels of San Francisco's subterranean wonderland. Our guide is a sewer inspector named Gene. Like me, Gene is dressed in canvas and rubber. He's sweating heavily, breathing through clenched teeth, and weighed down by a bucket of mortar that dangles from a rope looped around his neck. I carry a similar bucket in a similar fashion, while Branson creeps behind us with a television camera and a giant microphone on a long pole. "Be careful," says Gene. "It's slicker than snot through here. If you slip, it's better to fall backwards." Gene's advice is excellent. Below us, the flotsam and jetsam of a million medicine cabinets bob and float on the chocolate-colored tide. Tampons and Q-tips, diapers and dental floss, Kotex and Kleenex. The used condoms are especially ubiquitous. Unfurled, they cling to our hip boots like colorful ornaments on limbless trees of black and shiny rubber. The smell cannot be described or overstated, but a G.I. Joe action figure floating by on a giant turd cannot be ignored. "How much further?" I ask. "Not far," says Gene. "A couple 100 yards, maybe a little more." As we descend deeper into the labyrinth, the tunnel begins to narrow, and the walls and ceiling begin to move. Roaches, millions and millions of roaches, are feasting on the permanent glaze of human excrement. Within moments, they spy our flickering headlamps and rush over to investigate, covering us from head to toe like a living quilt. It's a page from Poe, a tableau from Dante, and a painting by Bosch, all combined and brought to life in a three-dimensional fresco of macrobiotic devastation. Branson quietly vomits into the effluvium, but God bless him, never stops rolling. I turn and address the camera. "As you can see, we're not alone down here. There's a surprise around every corner, and no telling what's waiting around the bend." "Try not to talk," says Gene, "unless it's really important. Nothing good happens down here when your mouth is open." Again, Gene's advice is excellent, but impossible to heed. I'm a television host. Talking is what I do. It's pretty much all I do. As I attempt to explain this, a watery jet of brown liquid explodes from a small hole inches above my head and splatters into the lens of Branson's camera. These holes are called laterals, miniature tunnels that link up to a vast network of smaller pipes in the hills high above us and lead directly to thousands of individual commodes in the very best parts of town. In this way, the contents of a toilet in Nob Hill can gather a level of momentum far beyond that of a typical flush and enter our workspace at a velocity not often associated with human waste. Gene tosses me a methane detector. "Here, put this around your neck. If it goes off," he says, "run for your life." We push on. Through the sewage, through the stench, through the roaches. 100 yards later, or maybe a little more, we come to a crossroads. "Here's a problem," says Gene. "This whole area needs to be redone." Gene wipes a few hundred roaches away from the ceiling and reveals a dozen or so bricks in the supporting arch in various stages of disintegration. As Gene gets busy digging them out, I look once again toward the camera, determined to inform the viewer with some fascinating facts about the sewers of San Francisco, at which point my co-host appears. He's about the size of a shoebox, with a tail like a riding crop. He may have crept up behind me, as rats often do, or he may have emerged from the lateral just above my head. Either way, he lands on my back with a moist and heavy thud. Then he's on my shoulder, reeking of urine and squealing loudly into my ear. I respond with some squeals of my own. He then tumbles into my crotch, enters the top of my hip boot, and begins to claw his way down my innermost thigh. Naturally, I leap off my feet, smash my head into the 4-foot ceiling, and fall forward into the sewage. The rat bolts from my boot, roaches cascade from above, Branson vomits, I gag, Gene laughs. "Hey, Mike, when you're done playing with the wildlife, come on over here and hand me that trowel. I could use an extra pair of hands." I push myself up from the sludge and spit something out of my mouth. I try to recall the difference between hepatitis A and B. Not that it matters. I've surely contracted both. Then I hand Gene the trowel and ask him how else I could be of service. Well, you could mix up another batch of mortar. I don't know about you, but I'd like to get out of here before people start coming home, taking showers. For the first time, I really look at Gene. I look at what he's doing. I look where he's doing it. And I try to imagine doing it every single day. Tell me they pay you a fortune, I say. Tell me you're rolling in the dough. Gene hammers the chisel deep into the rotten mortar and starts to pry the old brick free. I wouldn't call it a fortune, he says, but I'm doing pretty well. Yeah? How about the stink, I ask. You ever get used to it? You can get used to anything, he says. After a while, it all starts to smell like money. The day wears on. Gene and I chat while we work. I learn some things about masonry. I learn some things about sewers. We share a few laughs. Then my methane alarm starts to beep, and we all run for our lives. Later that evening, after a series of hot showers and cold beers, I went back to my cubicle at CBS and took a look at the footage. I was not optimistic. My boss at Evening Magazine had allowed me to shoot an experimental segment called Somebody's Gotta Do It. I'd pitched the idea as a tribute to hardworking people who never get any credit for doing what they do. Gene certainly fit the bill, but I had no idea if the footage was even usable. The camera angles were impossible, the light was insufficient, and the day had been cut short by a wave of toxic gas. But I was wrong. The footage was magnificent. In spite of all his vomiting, Branson had captured some really amazing stuff. The roaches looked like aliens. The sewage looked like toxic sludge, and everything else was beautifully and delightfully disgusting. Aside from the smell, it was exactly as I remembered it. The only problem was me. I was trying too hard. I was talking too much. Basically, I was acting like a host, which is what I'd been doing most of my career. But down there, in the sewer, surrounded by all that genuine reality, it felt fake. Then the rat materialized. I still couldn't tell where he came from, but watching his movements in slow motion revealed an obvious agenda and a route that now appeared predetermined. From my back to my shoulder in a twinkling, a deliberate pause followed by a screech directly into my ear, then another one. What was he trying to say? Then a swan dive into my lap and a quick foray down my boot. I knew what came next, but watching it unfold was a weird mix of funny and horrifying. 1 minute, I was doing a bad impersonation of a local reporter. A second later, I was face down in human feces, squealing like a 10-pound baby girl. I sat at my desk, transfixed. It was a rat intervention, and I couldn't stop watching it. From that moment on, I forgot about the camera and focused on helping Gene. Turns out he knew all there was to know about sewers. Duh. And hearing him talk was a hell of a lot more interesting than listening to me spit out a bunch of facts I'd memorized the night before. But there was something else. Watching us work side by side, I saw that Gene's skill and knowledge were actually magnified by the absence of my own. That was humbling. Nobody likes to look incompetent, especially on television. But it was also real. And as I watched the novice learn from the expert, I saw the thing I'd been trying to capture all along. I saw an authentic tribute to hard work. That's when it hit me. Somebody's Got to Do It didn't need a host. It needed an apprentice. Aristotle called these moments of profound realization peripeteia, the part of a Greek tragedy when the hero realizes something that makes him see the world in a totally different way. Hey, guess what, Oedipus? Your wife is also your mother. Surprise. I'd been hosting TV shows for nearly 20 years, and I was pretty good at it. But sitting there at my desk, seeing the evidence with my own eyes, I had a peripeteia of my own. I realized that I was done with hosting. I would no longer pretend to know things I didn't. I would no longer read from teleprompters and recite someone else's copy. From then on, I would let the worker be the expert. I would become a perpetual apprentice. A few months later, Somebody's Got to Do It won an Emmy. A few months after that, I quit my job at CBS. And a few months after that, Somebody's Got to Do It became Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe. As lessons go, that was a big one, but not the biggest, because somewhere along the weird trajectory of my own callow career, I had lost my connection to honest work. I was no longer mindful of the miracle of modern plumbing, or food production, or domestic manufacturing, or cheap electricity. Not because I didn't care about such things, but because I no longer had a personal relationship with the people who provided them. Dirty jobs changed all that. What began with a brief baptism in the sewers of San Francisco turned into an 8-year course in peripetia with a minor in humility and 300 mandatory field trips. Eventually, I got reconnected with work by getting to know hundreds of Americans who allowed me to walk a mile in their shoes. Granted, sometimes the walk was a crawl. Sometimes the road was a tunnel. And sometimes the shoes were hip boots. But the journey was worth taking. And from the start, I was determined to see where the tunnel might lead.